Hi, and welcome to another tutorial in our Spring Boot class. In this video, we're going to be working with the Thymeleaf templating engine. So we're going to be creating front-end web pages for our Spring Boot app. This is part of a series of a class on building websites using Java, using the Spring Boot framework. So here's the index of everything that we're studying, and we are currently in section 4 right now, which is about SQL database access. And so up until this point, we have created some SQL databases, and now we're going to put the front end on so that way we can see what the data actually looks like. In the future videos that you're going to see here, we're going to add a different kind of a database called Mongo. We're going to add some login features so we have security on our website, and then finally a design pattern where you can split up your application into smaller pieces called microservices. So if any of that is interesting to you, then make sure you stick through the rest of it so that way you don't miss anything. So in this diagram here, we have an idea of how a website and the whole stack is implemented. So there's lots of layers. We have built each of these layers all the way from the top to the bottom. And so now what we want to do in this section is focus in on the controller and the front end view. So that way we have some kind of an interface for our users. So we will be communicating directly with the database, and then through the layers we will display it to the user. So let's take a peek now at what is coming up. What are you going to learn at this lesson, and when you're done, will you know that you finished? So by the time you're done here, we'll be able to take the list of orders, which is in our database now, and we will be able to display it in this table format. So as you can see, the formatting looks fairly nice. It's done with the Bootstrap framework for CSS. And so I'm going to show you how to merge data into an HTML page. So that is with what's called Thymeleaf. Then we need to have a way to search our database, don't we? So we're going to have to create a place where you can enter that search term, and then the search results will come out like the orders list, except we will only show, in this case, the word instant is a keyword that we found. So there was one item in my database that matched instant as a keyword. We'll also have the ability to add items to our database. And so we've already created this functionality in the database controller. Now we are going to have a form where the user can put this information in and then submit it. And then we're going to have an admin page. So the ability to edit something and then delete something. So it's just like the orders page, except with these two new buttons on the right side here. So if we want to edit an item, we need to create a form where we can fill in the details of each item and any changes we wish to make. So all those items together are considered a CRUD application. CRUD is create, read, update, and delete. So if the previous video showed you how to do that using SQL statements or connections to the database, this video will show you how to attach the front end so that you can complete all those actions. So let's get started with the coding of building our Thymeleaf templates for our application. Okay, so we're going to be using Thymeleaf quite a bit in this tutorial, so let's look at their website to get an example of what this code should look like. So I am scrolling down to their page where they have an example table. Notice that the table is pretty much typical HTML, with one exception. So they toss in these things such as the TH namespace, and then the type of data they're expecting, which is text. And then here is the value that comes from a model. So this represents a Java class and its properties. So this is the idea of what we're going to be creating with all of our forms today. It's going to be a Thymeleaf where you have HTML and properties of objects mixed together. So let's do that now. Okay, so it's time to start with project 4.3. So activity topic 4.2 is what we had before. Let's go ahead and choose a copy and a paste and choose the copy button. And now we have a new project so that way we can save our results from 4.2 without messing it up. Let's go open up the project and change its properties. There are 3 things to change, as you might remember. We need to go and find the project called topic 4.2 application. We'll refactor that and rename the file to 4.3. Inside the POM file are 2 references to the project name. So the artifact ID should be called topic 4.3, and the other one called name, another property called name, should be 4.3 as well. All right, so we've got everything renamed, so we're ready to go with topic 4.3. Now the first thing I want to do is create the form so we can add a new item to our database. So I'm looking in the resources folder and we are looking at the templates folder. Right click and choose add a new item. Choose other so we can select the HTML starter code. The name of the file is going to be called addNewOrderForm.html, and make sure that you capitalize all this the same I did, or at least remember what you named it. So we have some starter code for a new form. Now let's fix the first two lines because these are not taking into account that we're using Thymeleaf. So I'm switching back to orders, which is an actual Thymeleaf page, and copy the first two lines. So we'll overwrite these in the add new form. Now what did we put those in there for? Well, the first item was to identify this as a subform of a layout. So the default layout is going to use this form. Then also we have the item called XMLNSTH. So that stands for the namespace of TH. So everything on the page that starts with a TH is going to be identified as a Thymeleaf item. Now, if you can put this in here optionally, really, you'll just get a lot of errors as you're editing the page. But the program will compile and execute and display properly. This will just help us as we edit. We need another section that will tell us that this is the fragment called the content. So let's go back into orders and look for layout fragment equals content. That's important. And we will bring that back into our edit form. So this here is the starting code now for any form that we would work with in our page. So I'm just going to keep this content around. Let's go and add a new file and create an HTML file. I'm going to call this thing starter code, for example. So this starter code will help us is figuring out where the layouts are, the fragments are, and also that the Thymeleaf template is being used. So we'll keep this around because we'll probably create several other pages in this activity. Okay, we can close the starter code and let's go back into our add one form. What I want to do here is create a form that we can generate a new order with. So a data entry form with a bunch of text inputs. Now I'm going to switch back into my web browser and bring up Bootstrap. So this is bootstrap.com. So this is the official Bootstrap web page. And you can see that I chose docs and I'm looking at forms. So forms has a bunch of code that we can copy. So right here from the beginning, this looks like a data entry form that says email address, password, and a check mark. So we can probably use this as a starting point. So let's go ahead and just copy this and go put it right into our page here. So paste it. Now we've got ourselves a place where I can put in emails and passwords. Not quite what I want, but it's going to be close. So what I care about is really just the text entry areas. So let's go ahead and select the final two of the three, so the password and check me out, and I'll just press the delete key. Don't need those. We do need the submit button, and we need to have a text entry. So a bunch of this stuff here we can probably rename just so that we can get text and not an email. First thing I notice is the type. So instead of email, let's change it to text. The label here, the label is a label for the input. The input name is called example input email, and the label points to that. So I need to give it an ID. So let's call it order number input. So I will copy this and paste it over top of that so that they correspond to each other. Now let's update the other items too. So we need a help section apparently. Let's call this thing order number help. And the idea is to give some hints on how to use this. So order number help has to correspond to these two locations. And what kind of help do we need? Well, an order number is just an invented number. Okay, so we've got ourselves a basic form here, and let's see if it actually works. So I'm going to save this and now go back to the controller to see if we can call this up. So opening up the orders controller and scrolling down, let's get an idea of what a controller does again. So a controller item needs a get mapping and then a pathway. We need to have a method name, and then it looks like model is pretty typical. We need to pass data to and from it. And then finally, we need to return the HTML name of our document. So let's use that as our example. So the first thing we need to do is tell it which pathway we are expecting the browser to be navigating with. So let's choose get mapping and then the pathway in the URL. So I'm going to say show new order form. Well, the next thing is we need to have the method itself. So let's do a public return of string type, and we'll call the method showNewForm. We need to provide a model so we can pass data to this form. And then finally, we need to tell it what we are returning. So we are going to return the name of the file that we just created, which is add new order form. And .html is optional. Okay, so now we've got ourselves at least the ability to show the form. Let's test it out. So I'm going to run this. Let's go to the right click on the project name, go down to Run As, and choose Spring Boot App. Now I'm doing it this long way because if you just click the green arrow, it might run the previous project that you were working on. So this will specify exactly that project 4.3 is being operated on. So looks like I have to save the changes and run it and cross your fingers to see if it actually works. Okay, so let's go back to Chrome, and I'm going to open up a new tab, searching for localhost :8080/orders with a trailing slash at the end is how we left this application after the previous tutorial. And so in this case, you can see that we have displayed all the orders that are in our database. Now, the new item was this for showing a new form. So I'm going to add an item after the slash and say show new order form. Now I'm typing this with a very careful capital letters, lowercase, uppercase, to make sure that it matches the same as the pathway that I defined in the controller. So the order number is the only item in the list right now, and I can choose submit, but there's no action associated yet. So if you haven't gotten this, let's go back and check to make sure there's a few details you probably would have missed. So this here has no slash at the end. So therefore, there is no slash at the end over here. Also notice that the name here has some capital letters in it. Make sure that you type that correctly, and then also make sure that your spelling is correct down here. So match everything up. Now, how do we make this form actually a little bit more pretty and more complete? Because right now, the form has only one item in it, and we need a bunch of items, and it's kind of crowded into the top of the page. So a couple of items that we can fix right away. The first item that I'm going to do is put the entire form into a container. Now in Bootstrap, a container is a nice way to make something have some bigger margins, and it is automatically resizable according to the size of your browser window. So let's go and refresh the page and see if that looks any better. So you can see that it has a left and a right margin now. I could use a top and a bottom margin. Wouldn't that be nice? So I'm going to use a couple of Bootstrap items called MT, which is for the margin top, and then MB, which is the margin bottom. And then you provide some kind of a number. So let's save that and try it again. See if it looks any better. You can see a slight margin now. Okay, so now it's time to finish the rest of this form. So let's copy and paste this data entry form, and let's make about 5 copies, I think, and then we'll do a change to each of them according to the properties of our order. So just to remind myself what I'm dealing with here, I'm going to open up the order model. So in the orders models folders, and let's see, I need to have, an ID, an order number, a product name, price, and quantity. So I have to put all of those things into my data entry form. Let's do that now. So I'm going to rename the second, third, and fourth items. So we have order name, and then the next one is order price, and then finally is order quantity. So at least I got the names there. Now I have to adjust all the properties, and it looks like I can delete the last item. I copied it one too many times. So some of the other items in here are the label for. It has to be for the order name input, and that has to match the ID number of the next guy down. Then for the help file, we'll call it name order name help. And then for the help file, we'll just say, hey, invent a name for this order. Repeat the same process for price. So we're going to have the IDs for order price input. That has to go in there twice. And then if we want to use the help and the hint, then we have to call that thing order price help and put that in twice. Give it some kind of a help message to tell the user what to do. Finally, we get to the last item, which is for quantity. So we'll put in here the same 2 processes. So we'll do a help and a hint, and we'll have a message that will hopefully display like the others. Okay, so I've got all these things updated. I'm just going to save it. And I don't have to rerun the app. I can just go back and refresh the app. And the HTML is automatically displayed here. So it looks like order number, price, and name and quantity is all listed. Now, as you can see, there's no data. It's just an empty form. So now the next part is how to associate an item, like an order model, with all of the data fields. So if I want to add an item for associating with this field, I have to go to the controller. So in the controller, we're going to take the model, which is the display model, and add one attribute. So add attribute of type order. So let's call it order and make a new order object. So it's going to be completely blank. It's fresh. It's default. There's no properties to it. So we're going to fill in the data and then receive that back after the submission. Now we have to tell the form to expect this model and to populate the fields. So let's go into the item that we just coded and let's go and change some of these inputs. So the first place that we're going to update is up at the top where it says make a form. So the opening tag for the form. Each item in a form needs an action. So right now let's leave it as an empty point. We don't have an action defined for the form, so we'll just put in a pound sign. The second item though is what kind of method is this? So this is a post method. And then finally, we're going to tell it to expect an object. And so th is Thymeleaf : object means what kind of an object is going to be filling in this form. And of course, we sent to it the item called order. Now it looks like I can't spell method correctly, so let's go ahead and change that to method, and the error goes away. Okay, so now it's time to put in the property names for our entry so we can match up each entry item, each input field, with a property from our model. So first of all, let's open up the model to make sure that we got all these right. So we have ID, order, NO, product name, price, and quantity. We're going to keep those in mind because those are going to be associated with our input form. So the first thing we need to do is tell it which field is associated with this input form. So for the order number, I'm going to insert something called th::field and then give it a property name that matches the item that we expect in the model. So here we have the order NO, the order number. Notice I use a star when I identify it. So the star says refer to a previous object on this page. And so that previous object is up here in the form area, which is called order. So really this means order.order NO. Now I can repeat this process going down the form. So the next item down is for the name, the next item is for price, and then the final is for quantity. So hopefully I got all these spelled right. Let's go ahead and save this. So when I try to refresh this page, I get an error. And of course I did this on purpose. You see, it says status 500. Why didn't it work? It says something went wrong with the add new order form. Let's scroll down until we come to an error. It says here, caused by. And let's see if there's some specific page or line number that we can handle. So if I look down closely, I can find that line 23, column 12 is incorrect. So what is it, line 23? So line 23 says name. So is name the proper thing here? Let's go check the model and let's see, it's called product name. It's not name. So if you make a spelling mistake, it's obviously going to cause a problem. So let's see, this is going to be product with a capital N, and now we've got a product name. Will it work now? Let's refresh it. And this time we can see that the fields are filling in correctly. So we got an order number, we got an order name, and you notice we also have a not a text anymore, but we've got a digit. So this thing automatically changed to the right data type. So we've got a float value here, and we've got ourselves an integer down below. Okay, so let's put an action in here now. So right now we have an action for the form, which is the default HTML item. What I need to do is change this to a Thymeleaf action. So th::action, and then we're going to put in some kind of a string that will tell us where we're going to go. So the format here is you put in an @ symbol, and then a curly bracket, and then the name of the action that you want. So I'm going to do orders/add new, how about? And then the final curly bracket. So now after we have this action identified as add new, we need to go into the controller and create that method so it can respond. So back into the controller, we're going to create a new method. I'm going to expect it to receive a posting action from the form. So post mapping is what we put. So then the /add new will give us the method that we're going to be intercepting. So for right now, let's put down just return orders. That's where we're going next, is I want to display all the orders after we put a new one in. But we're going to have to put some processing in to actually make this go into the database. But for right now, this should allow us to have an action on the form. So let's switch back into the form here. And so I've got myself the add new item in the form. So I don't have to fill in any data really. I just need to push submit. And it does bring us back to the orders item. Notice I didn't tell it to display any orders, but it did display the page as I told it to. So now let's go back and do the processing so we can capture a new item, put it into the database, and then show all the items on the screen. Okay, so now we need three things to go into the parameters of our method. The first one is to check to see if this thing is actually a valid input. So all of the data ranges and everything that we program in the model are valid. I don't think I have any limits on any of the properties, but anyway, here it is. So valid of an order model, and I'll say the new order is the guy coming in. Now we have to put in another item called a binding result. So binding means I'm going to bind the all the inputs on my form to the order item that's coming in here. So binding means attach them. A relation has to be connected. And then finally, we're going to have a model so that we can send some more data along to the next page. So that's what model is for. So let's put together a little scale of what we're trying to accomplish next. So I need to, first of all, add this new item to the database. Then I need to get all the new items that are in the database, all the items in the database, and finally display all of them on the orders page. So that's what we're going to create. So let's put it in the comments. Okay, so let's do the first one here. So first of all, I need to add the new item to the database. Do I have a service for the database? I believe I do. Let's scroll up to the top, and you can see that there is something called service, which is the order business service. We haven't done anything with it until now, so let's go ahead and put that into action. So down here in my add new, I can say, tell me service. And hopefully there is something about add one. Is there an add one? Let's see if it works. So we got an add one. And then it's going to require some kind of an item here, such as new order. All right, so now I want to be able to redisplay the entire list. So the next step is to go ahead and fetch all the orders again. So let's make a list and call it orders. And we'll use the service to say get orders. It should get all of them for us, saving it to the list. Now we have to pass this on to the next page. So we insert a new property or a new attribute into our model, and we'll call it orders. And we'll use the orders list. Now, finally, when we display the orders, they should show up on the full table. Okay, so let's go back and start with just the orders. Those are working. Now I want to show the new form, so let's do is show new order form. Let's make a new order. Okay, so I'm going to fill in a whole bunch of data, such as an order number. Let's call it something great, the price, and the quantity. And now I choose submit. And what do you know? I've got another issue. You'd think that everything would work great the first time. However, it doesn't seem to do that in real life. What can we find is a problem? So it says we couldn't do an update, and you can see that it had some data to work with, but one of the pieces is obviously causing it to fail. Now you notice it says here the ID is 0. And so I bet we can't put in an ID 0 because of some kind of a duplicate number, or the ID number cannot be specified. And sure enough, it says down below that says ID 0 is not found in the database. So the ID number cannot be 0. However, the ID number should be empty. It should be null. So let's go back into the controller and set that. So the new order item that's coming in is probably got 0 as a default item as a property. And so we'll just say set the ID to be null. And that way when it goes to try to put it into the database, it recognizes it as a new item. No ID has been associated yet with it. So we will invent one. That's the job of the database, is to create that new item. So let's save that and try it again. Okay, so I'm going to come back to here. Let's go back a page and let's push submit again. This time it looks like it might work. Let's go to the bottom, and sure enough we have order number 23 in my case. 23 was the next one in order. It automatically picked an ID number for me, but the rest of the stuff is what I put into the form. So let's go back and try another one. If I push submit again, we're going to get 2 of them. This time the ID is 24. So it looks like the input form is working properly. Wow, that took a lot of work, And now the other ones will be hopefully less so. Okay, so now I got the entire app working as far as adding new items. What I'd like to do next is to create a search form, so that way I can put in a keyword, such as the word diet or free, and then only the results that have that word in that would be displayed in this form. So we need two things here. We need a data entry form so we can provide a search term, and then we're going to filter the results according to whatever that search term is. So let's create the form first. So let's go back into our code editor. I'm going to make a new item. So let's go to the resources area and the templates folder. We'll do a right click, choose new, make an HTML document, and we'll call this thing search form. Now, fortunately, I saved the starter code from the last form. So I'm going to go into starter code, copy everything, and then paste it over top of whatever was generated for me. So now I have Thymeleaf as a template engine. So since I've already created an input form, I'm going to go back and copy a piece of it. So let's get the form item and the first input item. We'll copy this into our search form. So then we can start renaming a few things and adjusting to the new job that they have to do. So first of all, the action for the form. Let's call this action orders/search. And then the object is not going to be an order model. Instead, let's invent a new model that we'll create in a few minutes. We'll call it, how about search model? It'll probably just have one property in it. And then we're going to change all the properties of our input fields. So search term input should be a good name for the ID of this thing. And let's copy that and put it twice. Put in search for as the text. And what else do we have? We've got the search help, if there is such a thing. So the phrase for the help could be, give me a phrase for me to search for. Okay, one more last step here is the field. So instead of order number, I don't think order number is what I'm looking for. Let's call this thing search term. So what this implies now is that I'm going to have a search model, and it's going to have at least one property called search term. Lastly, you can see that the form is complaining because I have not closed it. So let's do a /form to end this, and we are ready to go. Now, to make this work, we need a search model, and we don't have that in our programs, so let's go up into the models folder and make one. So let's do a right click and choose a new class. Okay, so we'll make a new item inside of our models folder. I'm going to call it search model. There's really only one property that I need to worry about here, and it's a string. So the string called search term. And we're going to need a constructor and some getters and setters. So let's do a right click and choose source and choose generate getters and setters. And then we're going to make another source and choose a constructor. So when we're all done, we have a pretty simple model here. It's got one property and it's got the getters and setters to go with it. So now we can use that in our form. All right, so now we need to have an action to be able to display this form, and then that form needs to do something. So let's get some example code. We can use the show order form as our possible model to pick from, and let's paste it. So we have just a quick editing. So I'll move down to the bottom of the page here and do all the searching together. So the first method is called show me a form. So let's do show search form as our expected URL. The string is the property of its return type. Also, we're going to have the name method. It can be anything you like, but show search form seems to make sense to me. Then our model is going to be an actual search model. So we'll call it that property, a search model. We'll make a new instance of it right here in the parameter. And then finally, the item that we're going to display is searchform.html. Okay, so that should be enough to display the form. Okay, so let's go back into our web browser. And instead of orders, let's put in a /show search form and press enter. And sure enough, we got the form. Looks to me like I've got the form without a submit button and there's no actions to go with it, but we're getting closer. So let's take care of that submit button first. So I'm going to go borrow the code from our other form, which was the add order forms. And the last thing on the list was a button of type submit. So let's copy him and put him back into our search form. Okay, so now we got ourselves the button. Now this item here, the search action in the controller, doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to try to submit anyway, and it'll probably cause an error, but let's see what happens. So here's the page. I'm going to refresh it. Sure enough, there's a submit. So I type in some kind of a search and choose submit. And sure enough, it says, can't do that. I don't know where you're going, 404. So not found. Not a problem. Let's create that and then it will respond correctly. Okay, to respond to the search event, we're going to have to go to the controller to do that. So let's go and add a new item. It's called a post mapping because it is responding to the form input, which is a post action. The action is called search, so /search. Then we're going to have a method that will return a string, which of course is the next page. Now the next page that we're going to display is the orders page. So we're going to filter the list of orders that comes in and then pretend that we're all showing them all on that page. So the search term will be determining how many different items are actually sent back. Now we need to capture all the data from the form. So we did that in a previous example here in add new. So I'm going to copy all of the items that are up here and bring them back into our search. So what do we have to work with? We have an order as a model. That is incorrect. Now we have what's called a search model, and we'll call it search model as our input. So it will bind the search results into this item called search model. Now just to make this obvious, I'm going to save the results into a string, call it search term. So search model.getSearchTerm should contain whatever the user typed into that form. So now we have a search term. Now I'm going to take some code from the previous example to say, let's go fetch all the items from the database and then display them on the orders page. So that isn't quite search results, but it will be something we can modify and make it into search results. So instead of get orders, the key difference here is instead of get orders, we're going to have a different property. So the last item on my suggestions was say search term and in the parameters, search orders. So that might actually work. So I'll save it and let the computer recompile, and we'll come back to this page here where we have the search term. Let's refresh it and let's search for the letter A. What happens when I choose submit? And we only get partial results now, so it looks like it might be working. So let's go ahead and put in something like diet and see if that does anything. Sure enough, we get only one. Is the keyword free available? And sure enough, there's one item for free. So amazingly, we have got search terms. So let's see if ST comes up with anything. Looks like 2 of them. So searching is working. Next, I would like to be able to display an admin page so that I can edit and delete each of the items. So let's go ahead and put in the first form for showing the admin. So let's right-click in the area called templates and make a new item, and it'll be an HTML item. So let's call it ordersadmin.html. Now I'm going to copy and paste a bunch of code because I don't want you to sit here and watch me type the whole time. This video is getting long enough already. Let's take a look at what I just put in here though. So you can get the source code, of course. I'll show you the notes below where you can just copy and paste this yourself. But what did we do? We added something to the orders page. So back in the original video, we created a video that was going to show a table. And this table showed 5 columns. You can see ID, order number, name, price, and quantity. So this is going to be based on that. So the orders admin page has those 5 columns plus 2 more. So here's the 5 columns. And now we have a column called delete, a column header called edit. And if you look down into the code in those rows, each data item now has its own form. So this form is the form of exactly one button. All the rest of the items on here are all hidden. So you can see hidden is the type all the way through. And then there's a submit button with the word delete on it. So the action is going to be in the controller called the orders controller, and it's the delete action. So the hidden items allow us to put data on the form and still not display it to the user. Now down below here we have the same kind of an idea. We have an action called edit form. So we're going to display an edit form if we click the edit button. But we need to have all the data so we can fill in that form. So that's where all these hidden properties come into play. So we can still populate the form even though we're not actually showing it on the admin page. Okay, as I mentioned, you can copy this. If you look in the notes below, you can see how to get this source code. Now we need to go into the orders controller to be able to display this admin page. So I think we can probably use this show all orders as a good starting point. So I'm going to copy him and let's put it at the bottom of the page where we can modify it. So we just have to make a few adjustments to make this work. So first of all, the path is admin /admin. It will show us the admin form. Then we're going to go to the bottom where it says the return type, the return element. So the orders admin.html is the new page. But other than that, we're just going to get all of the elements from the database as we did before. So let's save this and try it out. So here is the page for the orders, and now I'm going to put in the new extension /admin. And we've got a problem. So yours might have worked just fine, but obviously I can't type something. What did I do wrong? So it says, go find me the orders admin page and show it. So what did I call this thing? Is that the order admin page? No, it is not. It's missing a letter. So let's see if we can do a refactor and rename, and I'll sneak in the letter N. Okay, double check to make sure I got it all spelled right. So it looks like orders admin is now spelled correctly. So I'll switch back to the browser and let's go back to orders and try it again. So put in /admin, and this time we have ourselves a list. So you can see that delete and edit now show up here. So what happens if I try edit? Doesn't work. I think the same thing would probably happen if I tried delete. No going there either. So we've still got some work to do, but at least we got the admin page showing. All right, so now it's time to make some more forms. Let's make the edit form appear here. So I'm going to go over to the layouts area and the templates and choose a right click, and let's make a new item. So let's choose an HTML as our template, and then we'll create an item called edit form.html. Now once again, I'm going to just paste in a bunch of code and then let you look at it, so that way we don't spend so much time on the video. So the action here is going to be some form. Here it is. So we're going to do an item called do update, and it's going to be working with the order model along the way. And let's see, we're going to have data entry form. So this is pretty much based on the new item form. So let me scroll down here slowly so you can see all the items. So we've got 5 different input types. It looks like in this case I'm doing some error controlling. So if there is some items that are not formatted properly, if you don't put in a number when you're supposed to, for example, it will give you an error message. Okay, so now we need to make an action. So the action is called do update, and that has to go into the controller. So let me paste in another piece of code here that you can take a look at. So do update is our item. It's a post action, and it is going to get something from the order model, do the binding result and all that. And we're going to call this service and do a update 1. So the order that we get is going to be submitted for changes, not for new, but for updates. Then we're going to get all the orders again and redisplay the admin page. And for some reason I have search order model. I don't want that in there. So let's take him out and we're ready to go. Let's see if we can do an edit now. Okay, so that's the do update. Now how do we actually get that form to display? So the edit form is probably a beautiful looking form, but I have to have a method to show it. So let's go back to the admin page and see what we had programmed here. So we had something called edit form, and it would probably display the form that I just created. So let's make an edit form method. All right, so I'm going to paste in some code again, which we will just copy. So now this item is for showing the edit form. So /edit form is the action, and it says go show me edit form, and I'm going to fill in a couple of attributes, and the order model will be sent. So let's save this and retry the application. So first of all, to get to the admin page, I type in admin, and now I'm going to try the first button. So if I click here, sure enough, I get the easy diet pills that fill in here. So let's change the price to $999 and choose update. And now we've got ourselves a price of $9.99. So it looks like the edit's working. So let's try a quantity of 82. And does that change? It does. So next is the delete item. We're going to have to make these red buttons do something. So to make the delete button work, let's go look at the delete action here. So delete is an action in the controller that doesn't exist yet. So let's create that. So I'm switching back to the controller, and I'm going to paste in some more code. So this is the delete action. So we're going to have an order that's sent to us, and we're going to delete it using the action called delete one, redisplay the item, and for some reason I put search results in there, which I don't need right now. So let's say I don't like the last item called 24, something great. Let's delete him. And now the list is shorter, so something great is now gone again. So orbit the moon twice. Looks like I've got several copies of those. And with a single button, I can delete all of those extras. So it looks to me like the delete action is working. Now across the top, we could use a menu bar that looks better than this one because none of these things actually do anything. All right, so let's go find where that menu is actually stored. So if you remember from previous lessons, there was something called layouts and a common header. Okay, so I've got all this code that I was working with here a while ago. It looks to me like we just copied it straight out of Bootstrap. So I've updated the links, and I'm going to delete and paste those in so you can see the new changes. So same idea, except a much simpler menu. The main ideas that you need to look for are all of these links here. So these are all items that are in the controller, such as show search form, show the new order form, show admin. We don't have actions to do like show the edit form because we want that to come from the control of the admin page. So no delete here either. Let's go ahead and save the changes and refresh the page and see what comes up for our menu now. So let's try this again. And sure enough, we've got ourselves all, search, add, and admin. Okay, so that's a lot of code. We've got ourselves Thymeleaf everywhere, and it looks to me like we've got a full CRUD app. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to recreate this using JavaScript, and we can have AJAX updates, so partial updates for the front end, instead of having a full page update like you see it here. But anyway, that's coming next, so come right back, and I'll see you soon.